Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're here tonight. It's just 7 o'clock, so we're going to get started. Um, but before we dive in, I really want to set the tone for this masterclass so you know exactly what to expect. Okay. The goal of tonight is not to overwhelm you with information, it's honestly to help you recognize yourself and finally understand why midlife feels so much harder if you're neurodivergent. Okay. If you stay to the end, you'll walk away with clarity, not just about what's happening in our body, but what actually matters most to focus on next, because that's the most important piece, right? You don't want to miss the end because that's kind of where we put everything together. Okay. So before we start, I want to give a little bit of a disclaimer um, that says this is really about safety and feeling well and information. So if at any time tonight you're like, listen, this is too much for me, Dr. Sarah, I can't do this, I'm not feeling it, that is okay. You feel free to, check out. That's fine. Feel free to check out. Go, there will be a replay. So check your email. Okay. There will be a replay, but it's really about safety. And it's my real job and mission to make sure that you feel safe and comfortable. So if you need to do that, please, please do. Okay. I'm Dr. Sarah. I am a double board certified physician. I am neurodivergent and I work with women whose brains have always worked a little bit differently. Okay. My mission is really to help women understand what's exactly happening in their bodies and their brains and to give clear, actionable steps to feel better, not just to cope and survive like we've been doing. Okay. But before we talk about hormones and midlife and all the things, I do want to name something. I want to just put it out there and name it, which is that our brains are wired differently from the very beginning. From the second our neurodivergent brains were born, they have been wired differently. We are not broken. We're not lazy. We're not dramatic. Everything is not our fault. We are just different. Our brains are just different. Okay. Neurodivergent brains don't lack neurotransmitters. It's not that we don't have them, we do, right? They signal differently. Our neurodivergent brains take more information in at baseline, right? We process more sound, more emotion, more expectations, more details. Our brains burn more energy just deciding what matters in a day. And our brains do not run on willpower, they run on structure, safety, and context. And here's the part most of us have lived but never really had a language before. You didn't just build a life, you built systems, calendars, routines, rules, coping strategies, over preparation, right? Over functioning, always being the reliable one, the one everybody can count on and go to. You built scaffolding around your brain so that you could succeed in a world that was never designed for how you think and how your brain works. And it worked, right? It worked for a long time. It worked for a long time, but it was expensive. It's emotionally expensive the way that we've built these things. We are capable, we're intelligent, we're high achieving, but then we're quietly exhausted. And this is happening long before midlife ever shows up because these are the things that we are masking, right? I don't know if this sounds familiar to you. Have you always felt like functioning took more effort than it seemed like to take anyone else, right? More effort. Like for me to be able to accomplish that task that the girl next to me is accomplishing, I feel like it takes me 10 times longer to get there. And that may be true, right? And we build all those things around that. And then guess what happens? We insert midlife. Okay. So insert perimenopause, which by the way, ladies, for some baseline definitions, menopause, the average age of menopause in America is 51 and a half. And perimenopause can start anywhere from 7 to 14 years before that symptoms. That means that these things can be happening and we can be feeling them in our 30s. Okay. In our 30s, this can be going on. And here's the deal with the neurodivergent brain. Honestly, didn't create the problem. It literally just exposed it. Perimenopause doesn't change who we are. It changes the chemical environment that our brain is dependent on and that we've built all of these systems around to keep us safe. It changes that environment on us. Estrogen is unbelievable. Okay. It is not just a reproductive hormone. It in the female body, estrogen is responsible for over 400 processes in the female body. That is insane. 400. The next hormone that even comes second to estrogen in the female body is TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. And that's responsible for about 220 to 250 processes. So estrogen is responsible for 400. That's pretty powerful, right? Estrogen modulates neurotransmitters. It smooths signaling. It helps us with our focus, with emotional regulation, with sleep, with stress response. So for our neurodivergent brains that already have to work harder to regulate and to filter, estrogen has been a part of that quiet support system that helped us. We didn't maybe necessarily know it was there, but it was helping hold everything together. So now insert midlife, right? When estrogen becomes erratic, it's not that it's necessarily low or gone yet. It just becomes unpredictable. And the systems that we were compensating for quietly, that we built all around us and that we are using our neurodivergent brains to compensate for, they stop compensating. Okay. They stop compensating. And that's the moment many women tell themselves a story that isn't true. You didn't suddenly fall apart. Okay. I want to say that again. You did not suddenly fall apart. The dang floor moved out from underneath you. Okay. You're still standing in the same place and you're wondering why everything feels louder, harder, more terrible, but you didn't change anything, right? Guess what? Welcome to midlife. That is estrogen and progesterone and all of the things going out from underneath us, right? It pulled that rug out from underneath us. If you've been saying a version of this, right? Hear this out and feel this. If you've been saying something like, I used to be able to handle this, but now I can't, right? Someone actually told me at one of my clients yesterday, she was like, I can't even be in a bright room. Lights bother me. She's like, sounds bother me. Somebody closing a door bothers me, right? These are things, or a lot of women will say, I used to be able to handle a lot of stress. Now I can't, right? These are all because that floor was ripped out from underneath us. We had built all these things around our brain, our neurodivergent brain. And now that the estrogen is crazy, it is gone. It isn't lost though. It is signal. This is a signal, our body signal, that the strategy that we were using and have been using for decades has to change. And inside of the collective, that's exactly why I built that, to create personal strategy together, because one neurodivergent brain is not the same as another neurodivergent brain. And we all need a little bit of something different. But there is two things that every neurodivergent woman needs. One of those is community, big time, right? We are good at suffering in silence and we should not be. And the second one to community is a personalized strategy, okay? Personal. What works for you, your body, your brain, okay? I want to talk to you about two neurotransmitters tonight that play a big role. There is a lot of them and more of them for neurodivergent brain, but I want to talk about two of the bigger ones because it helps us understand kind of like why our brain works the way it does. And then it gives us ways that we can institute strategies, right? To start helping ourselves to feel a little bit better. So dopamine is the first one. Dopamine gets a rap for like, everybody says I'm chasing a dopamine hit, right? Whether they're talking about working out or whatever it is. People think it's like about pleasure. It's really not. And especially for our neurodivergent brain, dopamine is our go signal. It is that neurotransmitter that allows our brain to initiate something, to shift gears, to move from intention to actual action. Okay. And here's the neurodivergent truth most women were never taught. Our brains do not lack dopamine, ladies. We have an inconsistent signaling problem. Okay. What would normally boost someone's dopamine doesn't always work for us. I always say it's like a key. We take that key and we put it in, and sometimes that key opens the door and sometimes it doesn't. And that's our problem. It isn't that we have low dopamine, because that's actually pretty easy to fix, right? It's just that we cannot activate that dopamine in regular access. And guess what? Midlife brings, guess what? Stabilizes the dopamine signal, estrogen. So now when midlife happens, we already in neurodivergent brains, we already can't access the dopamine we have. So let's say we have this much dopamine, right? We already can't access that dopamine that we have. Now, because estrogen is crazy, the amount of dopamine that we have goes down. So you can see how now this is a twofold problem in midlife. Our key isn't working, and then the level of what we have is also not there. Okay. So we lose a little bit of stabilization. If we already have to work harder than most people to access motivation, and then that estrogen drops, well, of course, everything suddenly feels impossible, right? Again, that rug, that floor is getting pulled out from underneath us. It's not like we did anything different. This is what it looks like or can look like in midlife. And remember, like I said this before, one neurodivergent brain is not the same as another. So some of these things may resonate with you. You may say, "Oh yeah, that." And some of it may be like, "Oh, I don't think that that works." And that is okay. We are all different, right? But this is what it can look like. I really, really care. I really, really, really want to do A, B, C, D, but I cannot start. I just can't do it. Okay. What we see a lot of is living off urgency, deadlines, and pressure. We can get that key to work if it's an emergency, right? So we're very much, our neurodivergent brains work very much on like, if there, we need to put urgency to a matter to get that initiation. I don't know if any of you have this, but this is one thing that's for me. I can be clear and focused at nighttime, but have daytime paralysis from like making decisions and doing things. And then also, a lot of women will suffer with rewards that should motivate us. Don't. So, your boss, right, saying, "Oh my gosh, you did a wonderful job." Maybe you get recognized for something. Normally, that would be, we would feel good about that, but we don't, right? We can't access that dopamine. So, we're like, "Yeah, okay, I did that." But that doesn't really motivate us. It doesn't give us that reward that it should. These aren't character flaws. They're signal problems, okay? They are neurochemical signal problems, okay? Neurochemical signal problems. So I don't know if there's anyone in the room that's done that, that it's wanted to start something or wanted to take that next step or wanted to do something, but every time you go to do that, you freeze. And if that is you, I want to say this, I see you, right? I see you because I've done that plenty of times, okay? You're not unmotivated though. You're under signaled. And once we understand that, we can stop trying to blame ourselves into action and shame ourselves into action. That doesn't work. Our brains don't work like that. And what we really need to do is we need to start changing the environment, the support, and the strategy, right? And that strategy, that personalized strategy, can be built inside of the intensive where we guide you through that again personally. That personal piece is huge. All right. So if dopamine is gas, the gas pedal, then GABA is our brake. And GABA is that second neurotransmitter that we're going to talk about tonight. GABA is our brake. Listen, our brains are amazing. Our neurodivergent brains, I say, are like Ferraris. And they really are, right? We are constantly going, we are thinking, we're pulling from things. We are like, our brains are like Ferraris. But the problem is that our GABA or our brake system is not. It's like an old, rusty, crusty, dusty 1933 truck. Okay. We have brakes, but they're like, we really got to work those. And that is the GABA, right? Our GABA is our Netflix and chill. It's what helps us, relax and that type. And again, our GABA isn't low. We don't lack it. We just have a weaker signal, right? A harder time initiating that GABA. Think about this. If our Ferrari brains had Ferrari brakes, right, and a good GABA system, then if we could activate our dopamine good and have a good GABA system, then what we would do is shut our brain down, right? We would put those brakes on and we'd stop, but we don't. We have these amazing brains that go and go and go. And then when we try to slow down, it's like, oh my God, I can't stop. Okay. And guess what? Let's insert midlife again. Let's insert perimenopause, drop that bomb. And guess what happens? progesterone becomes unstable. And progesterone for us women is one of the ways that GABA gets increased in our body. Now, I will caveat this. Some women and a lot of neurodivergent women. So here we go. 4% of women experience PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder. That can happen outside of midlife. That can be since you're a teenager and you get your period. 40% of that 4% of all women are neurodivergent. Okay. So there's a big piece in this, the way that we process progesterone and L-pregnenolone, which is what it breaks down to, and how GABA is affected. And I'm not going to go that deep. I do in the intensive, but I'm not going to go that deep here. But I just want to say that this could become a problem. Progesterone can be a problem for our neurodivergent brains all the way from when we first start having menses. But then insert perimenopause. So let's just pretend you hadn't had any issues. Insert perimenopause, progesterone goes down. Progesterone actually starts declining for all women in our 30s, right? It starts going down slowly first. So what does this feel like? What can this feel like? Wired but tired. Okay. And what does that mean? That means like at nighttime, you go to sleep and your brain, it just keeps ruminating and thinking and ruminating and thinking. And sometimes it's some women have like panic from that because it could be bad thoughts, but sometimes it's not bad thoughts. Sometimes it's just you can't shut your brain down. It's like, okay, I got to get a notebook and I got to do this and I got to mow the lawn and I got to, isn't necessarily bad. It's just you can't shut that down because our brakes are not working well. It can look like insomnia. It can look like sensory overload. A little bit of what we talked about where, oh my gosh, the lights are bothering me or the sound is bothering me or I can't. There's some women that are like, I cannot, don't touch me, right? Like I cannot be touched. That sensory overload has a lot to do with decreasing progesterone. Emotional reactivity. This isn't anxiety from the traditional sense. It's a nervous system without reliable brakes. Okay. So if anytime, if your sleep has become harder, you feel like your body is more on edge more often, right? Or maybe things sound, touch, light, all those things bother you. Well, I'm right here with you. Okay. And this is the part that matters because when the issue is signaling, it's not a character flaw. And for some reason, we've been programmed to think that all of these things, the way that our neurodivergent brain does things differently, are character flaws. But they're not. They're literally neurochemistry. Okay. So the solution, so sometimes we get stuck in trying to create solutions that don't work because the solution isn't to try harder. It's not to calm down, right? It's not manage your stress better. You can't fix a braking system with willpower. It doesn't work. You fix it by restoring the signals and the support that the nervous system needs. And that's why midlife care has to change. Because what actually helps the neurodivergent women in perimenopause isn't vague self-care. It is targeted support for hormones, for neurotransmitters, for nervous system regulation, and it needs to be built around how your brain actually works. I'm not going to go into detail, I do in the intensive, but not about hormones. But what I will say and why this is important if you are struggling and you are considering going on like hormone therapy, you do need still, as a neurodivergent woman, you still need to find a provider who understands the neurodivergent brain. And the reason is that we process things, and you've probably known this in your life and noticed it. If you take a medication or if you take a supplement, right? We process things differently. So sometimes neurodivergent women will get on hormones and they'll hate them and then they'll get off. Right? Because they're like, oh my gosh, this isn't for me. It's too much. No, but you have to work with a provider who understands the neurodivergent brain and is able to ebb and flow with that, right? Start really, really low, go really, really slow, right? All of these things. We got women cutting patches in half and taking half patches. We got all sorts of different things going on with progesterone. So it's not just a do one thing. It's you have to do the thing that works for you and in your pathway. And sometimes that takes work, right? It's a back and forth. The first time may not be right, and it's a back and forth, okay? But this is why we have to name it. This is why we have to talk about it. Because once we stop blaming anxiety, depression, ourselves, right, we can actually start rebuilding stability and strategy, right? Okay. So I want to give you, I know this can be really overwhelming. So I do want to talk about the pillars that we talk about in the intensive and just kind of go over them a little bit and give you some things that you can take away from tonight to start thinking about if it resonates with you. They all may not, but try to find one that you're like, oh yeah, that's me, right? This is happening to me. I'm doing that. And just start instituting some small little piece to try to get over that edge and make that better. I'm giving you a couple of examples, not because I want you to do everything today, but I want you to finally see what support really looks like and what support for the neurodivergent brain actually works. And you're going to notice a theme as we go along. These are not random tips. They're strategic, okay? They're not random, they are very strategic. And pillar number one is hormone stability. Okay. And this is so important. This starts with, and you can do this starting today. This starts with understanding you heard me, your hormonal rhythm. Okay. Not a lab range. We don't care about labs. We care about labs, right? To some degree, but we don't care about labs. What's most important is understanding your hormonal rhythm. Okay. And I'm going to give you an example. When I'm working with neurodivergent women, we get to the nitty gritty, right? And I like women to journal because we see a lot of stuff when we're journaling, right? Like, oh, wow. I'll just give an example. Those 3 days before my period are a nightmare. I can manage all the rest, okay? But those 3 days are a nightmare. And guess what? That's luteal phase. And those 7 to 10 days actually before your period is when estrogen is declining. Again, it's not about the number, ladies. It's about our neurodivergent brains don't like the delta, the change, right? It doesn't matter the absolute number. They don't like the change. But this is different for every woman. Well, some women, this is why you have to understand your hormonal pattern. And that actually will help you be the most successful in whatever treatments that you go to or whatever things you start to do for your symptoms because you're going to understand your pattern. Some women will be those 3 days. Some will be 7. Some will be the whole second half of the cycle. Okay. Some women will do poorly that first week and then they'll do poorly again 3 days after ovulation. But then the rest of the cycle, it's okay. So it's so important to know your hormonal rhythm. That's what I call it. I don't call it a pattern. I call it a rhythm. It's your hormonal rhythm. So you can actually do that today. Start mapping up when your symptoms show up across the month. What does sleep look like? What does anxiety look like? What is focus and irritability? This does not have to be difficult either. Literally just have a notebook and write down the day. You can do it on an app too. There's a lot of apps you can do, but it just gives you good information as you look over the couple months and you're like, oh, wow, this is when life is really tough for me. And then we can institute I call them precision guided missiles, right? We can institute precision guided missiles to figure out what we can do, right? Noticing those patterns and stuff, using timing and those types of things. So you can start doing that today. It's actually pretty easy. Pillar number two is nervous system regulation. This is about giving your nervous system reliable off ramps. Okay. So supporting sleep signaling instead of pushing through fatigue. These are things we go into. This part is one of the harder parts. This is we go into this really deeply in the intensive. And again, this is so personal. This is so personal because we have to look at your sleep patterns. What's happening? What are you doing before it? But we need to get rid of the days when we're pushing through the fatigue, right? We're making it, right? Reducing constant adrenaline from overscheduling, from trying to activate that dopamine by creating urgency for all of these things so we can get them done, right? We have to institute the ways to down regulate the nervous system. And hormones can be part of that, but they're not the whole thing, right? And they don't have to be. Creating predictable anchors in a day so that your body feels safe enough to downshift. The neurodivergent brain works and operates on safety, ladies. If we feel safe, we are able to tap into those neurotransmitters in ourselves a little bit better. And that neurotransmitters play a role in why we need to feel safe. Okay. So I would say if you have a tip you can take away today, if you have something that feels a little chaotic, like maybe it's the sleep, right? Try to take one thing. And I give this example, light temperature and routine for sleep, right? So try to not be on your iPad or your phone. I know we're on a video. If you're on Eastern time, it's 7:30. Um, an hour, try an hour. It really should be two, but even try 30 minutes less of, the blue light before you go to bed. Okay, just try, you can try that. Try that for a week. Consistency matters more than intensity, to be honest with you. But it is one of the things we focus on a lot in the intensive because down regulating our nervous system is difficult. Okay. It's difficult because we spend a lot of our neurodivergent brain life trying to upregulate that, right? To keep us where we're functioning. So learning how to tap into that at the right time is tough. It's not impossible. We do it. But it can be one of the more bigger challenges. So pillar three is mitochondrial health. I don't know if you guys know anything about mitochondria, but mitochondria are a darn gold mine. Okay, they make all of the energy in the entire body. And I'm going to tell you this, ladies, we are the most mitochondrial dense in our ovaries, okay, and in our brain. Those are the ovaries, brain, heart, and thyroid, okay? So you can see why, and here's a statistic for you. 96% of Americans are mitochondrial deficient in some way. And I'm not talking about mitochondrial dysfunction from birth. We're talking about mitochondrial dysfunction from food, from our environment, from toxic exposures, things we can't even control. Even if we were eating completely clean and we are amazing, it's soil and different things, right? Mitochondria are the longevity tool of 2026. I say that. They should be because focusing on the mitochondria and mitochondrial health can really help us because this is cellular energy. It's not motivation, right? If the cell that makes your energy is gummed up somewhere, right? That's not a you problem. That's a mitochondrial problem. That's a cellular problem. That's not a character flaw, right? That's a cellular problem. And we can address that, right? Addressing fatigue, right? Here's one of the things that doesn't fix with rest. Does anybody wake up and not feel rested, right? Hormones have a play in that, but so do mitochondria. Supporting energy production so that your brain has fuel to initiate and to focus. We already know, and we've already said that our neurodivergent brain can't activate that dopamine as much as we need to, right? So now imagine that your brain has 100 billion mitochondria. That is insane. It has 100 billion mitochondria in your brain. Okay. And where do we have our problems? I don't want to say our problems because they're not problems. Where do we have our difficulties at baseline? In our brain with neurotransmitters. So even cleaning up the mitochondrial health, even by 10%, can be life changing and life altering, honestly. Um, Matching demands to the actual energy that we have available, not expectations. And we work on this a lot in the intensive where we're looking at, okay, what does your day look like? Okay. And we work that in with those hormonal patterns, right? Your hormonal flow, we work that in. So it's like, listen, if 4 days before your period, things are chaotic and a mess, let's not be scheduling our most important meetings on those 4 days, right? Or maybe we're instituting some other processes in those 4 days, but let's not put more pressure on ourselves. Let's look at what our actual energy is that we have within our pattern and our flow. And then let's create a life around that so that we're not becoming even more chaotic. Okay. We talk about a lot of mitochondrial things from omega 3s to CoQ10 to methylene blue to red light to all these awesome, cool things. But one thing that most women are doing, women in general, and our neurodivergent brains also do this, we do not eat enough protein. That's just kind of hands down. We don't. Trust me, after I've treated thousands of women, I know women do not eat enough protein. But that is actually one thing that you can start today without going into supplements or anything that has to do with mitochondrial health. That's one thing you can actually start doing today that will increase your mitochondrial health. Start your day with protein. So whether you're taking that in food, starting with a protein rich breakfast, or like I do, because I always drink my coffee in the morning. That's a non-negotiable for me. I'm always going to do it. So I have non-flavored protein, boom, 25 grams of protein every morning when I'm drinking my coffee. Energy starts at the cellular level. Okay, this isn't a let's push through it. We need to get that cell, we need to fuel those cells to actually make us the energy because we already know our brains use it more. Okay, so pillar four is cognitive load reduction. And I'm going to tell you something. When we can conquer this, or when we can start to into in really getting in the depths of reducing our cognitive load, miraculous things change in our life. Okay. And this is actually where a lot of neurodivergent women finally feel relief. So we work on do things about like reducing decision fatigue. I already told you that our neurodivergent brains use more energy to make decisions. Okay. It's just true. That's how we work. So we talk about how to reduce decision fatigue. We talk about externalizing memories instead of holding on to every single thing in your head. And some quick and easy ways that you can offload, I call it cognitive offloading. You can offload those things as they're coming into your brain, right? And we work on creating a structure that supports your brain instead of fighting it. Okay. So one thing I'll give you an example of something that I do that works for me from a cognitive offload prospect. I am a person that has, 755 tabs up and I have three screens at my office. So, what I do for cognitive offloading is I have my tabs up because I need that. That makes me comfortable. But what I'm working on, the thing that I'm working on in that moment or that 20 minutes or that 30 minutes or that hour is only on the screen in front of me. All the rest of my tabs are open on my other two screens, but I'm only focusing on that task in front of me. And that helps me cognitively offload the things that are going on over here, but that my brain needs to go on. So I feel comfortable, but they're not in here in my face. I'm cognitively offloading them over here in safety. Okay. That alone, and it may be something different for you, right? But that alone lowers that nervous system overload that happens. So that's a really important pillar. And there's different ways that we work on that. Again, personalized to you, right? Because what works for me isn't going to work for you necessarily. It may, but it may not. So we have to tailor that to what works for you. And then identity recalibration. This is pretty interesting, and it's a tough one. Listen to this. Letting go of productivity standards that were built during survival mode. Okay? So, reframing rest as regulation and not failure. And this is where we work on helping change the dynamic of the way that our brain thinks, allowing support without shame. And we've already said this once, but the two things that the neurodivergent women, especially in midlife, right, as that floor comes out from underneath us, need are community and personalized strategy. And those don't change. Community, right? But looking at everybody around us and saying, holy cow, like I'm not crazy, right? I'm not crazy. Like, this isn't only me. I'm not the only one that does this or feels this way. Community is huge. And then the personalized strategy for you. Because again, I can put 10 neurodivergent women in a room. We could give you all the same mitochondrial, treatment, right? Let's just say methylene blue. And I can guarantee you that everyone is going to have some sort of a different take. Okay. And that personalized strategy is so important. We've already gone almost our whole lives being dismissed, right? And being underdiagnosed. And we've done a wonderful job, ladies. Okay. We really have. We are brilliant. We've done a wonderful job of building all of this stuff around us. And now midlife happens and it's literally just neurochemistry. It is neurochemistry. We have to fine tune that for you, but it literally is neurochemistry. Okay. It really is. All right. Um, and we built this. That's actually why I built the collective. I built the collective for those two reasons. Number one, I wanted community. I wanted women to come together and say, we can do this together. Plus, the more we educate women and the more that we understand our bodies and our brains, we can tell other women, and we're not going to keep this a secret and we're not going to keep it in the dark. And then guess what? This approach is built for how your brain actually works. All right. How your brain actually works. What we talked about today was literally just the surface level. We talked about the surface level. In the 4 week intensive, we go into depth in the pillars. We make a personalized plan for you that fits your biology, your brain, and your life, because that's most important, right? Even if we know how our brains work, even if we know the things we're supposed to do, instituting it in our life can become a problem. I hear like so many women will be like, I'm just so busy. I have so many things to do. I don't even know how much protein I intake. I can't do that, right? And so we help you put these things in front of you. I say you trip over them, right? We make you trip over them. I'll give you a funny example. I have a couple clients who are pretty powerful CEOs, CFOs, and they're just like, Dr. Sarah, I just can't. So guess what? I work with their assistants actually. And I say, okay, at 10 o'clock, put this protein stick in front of her face and don't let her go to the meeting without it, right? And we just have to create that for everybody, right? And we all need a little bit of something different, and that's okay, right? And here's the thing, ladies, midlife isn't time for generic advice, okay? It is not time for generic advice. It's really cool that it's out there in the zeitgeist and we're listening to these influencers, and I love that. I love that women's health is becoming, trendy. That's really good. But we also have to be careful of what we're listening to. Midlife, especially for the neurodivergent brain, is a time for precision. Okay. It's a time for precision. And I want to be honest with you, right? This really was just a little bit about orientation, right? Of orientation to our brains, how it works, how our nervous system works. Because once we understand that the things that we feel are real, they're neurochemically real, we have a better chance of instituting productive things that are going to help us and create those like personalized plans, right? Whether that's hormones, whether that's lifestyle things, or both, right? They can be both. We can do all of the things. We can do the hormone things and the lifestyle things. And honestly, we should be doing that. We should be doing that. So, I want to tell you a little bit about what the intensive actually is. It is not a course that you watch and forget, okay? It's where I take you through those 5 pillars. We're together for a month. So, if you're like, you're annoying as heck, Dr. Sarah, like I could not deal with you for a month, probably the intensive isn't for you because you will see a lot of me, a lot of different glasses. I wear, if you don't haven't been on any of my socials, like you should check them out, my YouTube and my Instagram. But I always have a different pair of glasses. I have a different pair of shoes, and they're usually always crazy. And I'll show you mine tonight because they're crazy, right? So I'm pretty fun and funky. So if you're like, you're annoying, then I'm probably not the right person, the right doctor to do an intensive with. But really, I created those pillars. I take you in depth in them, in all of them, and we create these personalized plans that works for you from a hormone level, from a nervous system regulation, from a mitochondrial level, a cognitive load, and really figuring out what your identity is in this time in your life based off your symptoms, your cycle pattern, right? Your hormonal pattern and your life constraints, right? Your the constraints we live. It's not generic advice. It's not try harder. And it certainly isn't white knuckling because we cannot be white knuckling through midlife. That is not going to work for us. Okay. It's not going to work for us anymore. We can't, now is the time when we don't have any extra capacity. We have maybe built our lives having extra capacity or making the world think we did, right? Because we've always been the doers and the goers and we figure it out no matter what. And we build that scaffolding all around us and we've done a really good job. And midlife is the time when those hormones start to change and it kicks that scaffolding right out from underneath us. And we just don't have the ability, we don't have the ability for that. So I am actually going to stay around and answer a few questions. I'm going to drop the link to the intensive in the chat. You can check it out. I do run the cohort of the intensive once a quarter, and I do that on purpose. And it's because I am very passionate about having small groups and working intensely with them because personalized advice and personalized care is really what our neurodivergent brains need. And yeah, I want you to leave there, and trust me, you will. feeling revived and renewed and like, oh my gosh, I know who I am again, right? And that's exactly what it is. So I don't like big groups. So I only offer it quarterly for that reason. If check it out, it may or may not be for you. That's cool. But if it's not, join our, free Facebook group where we have a Women's Unfiltered. You're gonna get in if you signed up for the masterclass tonight, you will get an email from me. And I'll have the replay in there. So if you came late, you can watch everything from the beginning. We talked about the pillars, we talked about dopamine, we talked about GABA. So you can go back through and look at that. But just come hang out on the socials, really, and just check us out. And we're always talking about information. We're talking about supplements and longevity and all of the things. We talk about libido, and we're in this January as a whole. We're talking all about sex and vaginal estrogen and all the crazy things. So if the intensive feels too intense, that's okay. Check out all of the other things that we have going on, but do check your email. And check spam too, because even as much as we try to not go to spam, we go. But I appreciate you and your time because I know you can be doing a lot of other things. And it really, really is my goal to educate women and really to increase awareness, because what I want for our daughters and their daughters is not to live in silence, right? I want us to talk about all of these things. I want us to normalize the neurodivergent brain. And so much that the ladies and the girls coming behind us don't have to suffer in silence, right? I want us to create these big, powerful movements, right? And telling everybody and talking about it. And the way that that works for us is by creating safe spaces. So, that's what I want to do. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll hang around for a couple minutes. If not, again, I really, really, really appreciate you and your time. And again, if you came in, you can catch the replay in your email. And if you have any questions, you certainly can email me. I'll actually let me put the email in here just in case sometimes I know people don't want to come online and ask questions, and that's okay too. But I put the email in there. So if you do have a question or something that you didn't want to share live, you just email me and I'll respond to you. I'll get back to you. Okay, if nobody has any questions. Oh, what is the schedule for the intensive? Okay, that's a great question. So this cohort actually starts on January 21st. And what we do is we meet weekly live. So it's a live session. If you can't make it, that's okay. It is recorded. You basically get in this whole membership, so you'll be able to see everything. There also is a Q&A every week. And so that is also live. So whether you can attend it live or not, if you can't attend it live, you still have the ability to ask your questions. And then what I do is I post them in the group. So, obviously if you're thinking of it, someone else is too, right? So, and then any questions that get asked in the live gets also put in as a replay. So you can look and see what other ladies' questions are and then what my responses to those were. And then if you write in a response, I will also post that. So then you have the ability to, everyone else has the ability to see your questions. I don't like anything being in silos. And that's what we do. We do it for 4 weeks. Each week is themed. The first week, we talk a lot about the brain and we get into some more neurotransmitters. We have a week of hormones. We have a week of, and the hormone week is pretty in depth. We talk about not just like, oh, hey, estrogen does 400 things in the female body, which it doesn't. It's amazing, but like right down to the nitty gritty of like what I see in active practice with neurodivergent brains and how they respond to estrogen and how we do things and why we see that, right? We get a lot more in depth. We also have a week where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of what I like to say, like the most trendy things in biohacking or longevity, right? Like, do we care about cold plunges? Do they work? Like, what's the science? And it's a lot about, really a lot about sisterhood and coming together, but it's also backed on science, right? So as a physician, I'm going to give you the science and I'm going to tell you where we have the science and where we don't, right? And in some things that we just deduce from physiology, from midlife and from knowing a neurodivergent brain the best that we can, right? We don't know everything. And then how we navigate that, right? And as women, whether we're neurodivergent or not, we're smart and we're strong and we're capable, right? We can make our own decisions. We can deduce the things that we want. And so we really walk through those kind of things like, hey, this is what the literature says. This is what we kind of know or what we're pursuing to know. What does that mean for you? Right? And like, does that help you make a decision? Does that not help you make a decision? And then we have in within the longevity week, we talk about, training, right? We talk about zone two, we talk about lifting, we talk about cardio, we talk about protein. We really just like get in depth with how we support our system and what we see that works. And then one of the more important things I think is what if it doesn't work? Right? So we started tonight talking about HRT. It doesn't work for everybody. And it doesn't work, it's not a one size fits all. And yes, if you're already in menopause, 100% this applies to you, even if you're on HRT and menopause. And the reason is that it's not all about hormone therapy. It's really about supporting our body as a whole. So my logo is a circle for a reason. And hormones are, again, they're trendy and they're good and they're a necessary and a useful tool if people decide that. But they're only one part of the circle, right? They're one part, they're a powerful part, but they're only one part and one tool. If we're not working on all the other parts, we talked about mitochondrial health, right? And we hit on a couple of things, cognitive load. All of that doesn't matter if you're in perimenopause or menopause, right? After, or if you're 16 or 18 years old and you're a neurodivergent brain, right? It doesn't, the timing of that and those things don't matter. Um, it makes the hormone piece, if we're menopausal, is a little bit easier if we go on hormone therapy because we don't have anything. So we just kind of, we can flatten out, where perimenopause is more about chaos, right? So one month, your estrogen's here, the next month it's here. And again, our neurodivergent brains don't love the delta, don't love that change. So yes, absolutely. I would say any neurodivergent brain, and I treat my youngest patient from a neurodivergent female standpoint is 14, and my oldest is 93. So, and everyone in between. So, there's something there for everyone. And really trying to look at the baseline of what our life is, what our goals are, and instituting those things that make sense to us in our life and that are going to increase our health span, right? How long we live well and our quality of how long we live. So, pretty important piece. So, thank you for asking that. I appreciate that. Um, yeah, you're welcome. You're really welcome. I really appreciate you coming. Honestly, I feel like I want this to be my life's work. I am going to write a book, ladies, so also stay tuned for that. It should be coming out in March, and it's basically a perimenopausal guide for the neurodivergent brain. Just helping us understand who we are, what we're doing, and why the heck everything is like feeling crazy, and then like where do we go from there, right? Like how do we start? So. Thank you for joining me tonight. Again, check out the intensive, check your email. I would love to have you in the intensive, of course, but if that's not, like I said, please come into our free women's Facebook group. It's called Women's Health Unfiltered. Come see what we're about, talk to us, take our polls, interact. We really just want to build community and a safe space for you. So I appreciate you all tonight. I did send that email there too, info@lashlifestyle.com. If you have a question or you just want to, touch base and ask me something, I'm more than happy to. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful night. Bye.